God, Meher Baba ki jai. Let's start with how to love God. Ashok ji, over to you.
Yes. Avatar, Meher Baba ki Jai. How to love God. To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our own dear ones, we love God. One, if instead of seeing faults in others, we look within ourselves, we are loving God. Two, if instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. Three, if we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. Four, if instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many, many others, we are loving God. Five, if we endure a lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. If we are six, if we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to hurt or harm any of His beings, we are loving God. Seven, to love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and to find Himself as our own self. By Meher Baba, Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. I just wanted to put on record one thing that this, uh, number, you know, in this, there's one thing that we should not hurt others. One second, it's
This one or
one second.
six?
Six, yes, 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 six. If
Yeah,
we
what about it?
we just had Mahavir Jayanti, and the basic principle of Jainism is to not hurt anybody in thought, word, or deed. Just a corollary. I just thought it's just uh, it's just that we can adopt that, and this is what it means in this: hurt or harm any of his beings, we are loving God. Jai
Wonderful. Jai Baba, Jai Baba. So, with that, let's get to our reading. So, just to give you some context of how our reading progresses sometimes, I'm not saying this with any intention to say that we should do it any other any other way, but I'm just pointing out. A second, I'll just get this. Yeah. So we are now on page 51. Okay. And if you see here, that's session 13, which was on 6th of April. Now, just to give you the context that I realized is the last time we read from 49 to 52, 3 pages. But guess the number of references and books that we went to. We went to Everything and the Nothing. We went to Nothing and the Everything. We went to Discourses. And all of these books were references that led out based either on supplemental information presented as official references in God Speaks, or references that from our reading group, we had people say, hey, let's go check that out. I remember this, we had Ravi last time who took us to Nothing and Everything, where we were debating this concept of seeing God in everything, right? So I just wanted to share. that speed is nothing, right? It's been millions of years, and it will be millions of years ahead of us as well. I think experiencing, understanding, and sharing and enjoying this journey of learning together is more important. So I want to
Ab-
just share that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that, let's continue. So we were at the end of the sixth plane. So we are in the chapter called the planes, and we read up to the fifth plane. We were halfway through the sixth plane. So let me continue from what is the last paragraph in the sixth plane. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. At this stage, the consciousness of the soul, which had experienced diverse, innumerable, and opposite impressions, now experiences the last trace of dual impressions of the opposites. This mental conscious human soul on the sixth plane is still conscious of duality, identifying himself as mind and differentiating himself from God. So I think uh, the important part is this, right? Now experiences the last trace of dual impressions of the opposite, right? And the consciousness is of duality, where the reference is God is separate from yourself. And Baba says identifying himself as mind. So, in the absence of Manonash, you are differentiating yourself from God, and duality is still prominent and live and kicking, right? So, that's what we are learning from this two lines here, right?
Yeah.
So, with that, there is a reference to go to supplement. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask that this means that we are in the stage of transition from duality to, this is the sixth plane is the so-called last plane in duality, right? So we have one leg in duality, we are getting rid of it, and we are moving on to the seventh plane. What I mean to say is that we are moving away from the last trace of dual impressions, and we are merging ourselves, getting ourselves as a precondition for God realization.
Yeah, correct. So, with that, let's go to the supplement 9, Gnosis of the sixth plane. Concerning the Concerning the gnosis of the sixth plane, Meher Baba tells us, and he quotes, only God exists, and if anything exists due to ignorance, its reality is illusory. It then exists as God's shadow, which means that God is both in the stage of knowledge and ignorance. The following four angles of the one experience, written in the language of Sufi gnosis, are different aspects of gnosis of souls in the sixth plane, when they are face to face with God, but still in the domain of duality. All these aspects are experienced together at the same time. So, this is Sufi, and there are four different aspects that are experienced in the sixth plane as described by Baba. And it's also simultaneous, right? All these are, yeah, experienced together at the same time. So let's underline that. Number one, Hama Ust. This means everything is He. And for one who experiences this gnosis, only God exists. Okay, so everything is he, and for one who experiences this gnosis, only God exists. Second one, Hama as Ust. This means everything is from him. And for one who experiences this gnosis, all phenomena, diversities, and manyness exist as illusion when ignorance prevails. So there is a distinction here. This means everything is from him, and for one who experiences this gnosis, all phenomena, diversities, and manyness exist as illusion when ignorance prevails. So everything is he, everything is from him. And third one, Hama Ba Ust. This means everything is with him. And for one who experiences this gnosis, God is both attributeless and with attributes. His attributes are unlimited when knowledge prevails and limited when ignorance prevails. Body, mind, and the three worlds do not exist, but if they seem to exist, they exist as shadows. Now, again, the shadows are an important way of understanding the illusory nature of our existence. And if you remember the chart here, this is the classical uh, chart, which is the chart 7, where the shadow is explained. We'll get to it, but I'm just giving you a reference where the shadow, the concept of shadow is beautifully explained by Baba. Now, here, these statements that are mentioned here, everything is he, everything is from him, everything is with him. They sound very, very simple, but then they are very profound and need to be thought through in the aspect that, I mean, with the assumption that they are all simultaneous experiences. All of these aspects are experienced together at the same time, right? So if you take the third one again, everything is with him is both the mention of attributes and the absence of attributes, right? So, yeah, last one, Hama Dar Ust. This means everything is in him. And for one experiencing this gnosis, even ignorance has no reality in itself. Its existence, when expressed, comes out of God's unconscious and infinite knowledge. And so, whatever exists in duality due to ignorance has come out of God where it everlastingly existed. So, that's exactly what this chart is, right? So if you see the sum total, the big circle is the whole of big R reality. And so even illusion is part of it.
Correct. Uh,
So yeah.
Jay Baba, I would say that it would be a good idea to cover that translation in English. Everything is him, everything is from him, uh, whatever is mentioned here.
Yeah.
Like everything is he. It might be a good idea to highlight this or underline it.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I meant. Yeah. It's a good idea. The thing is with him from, so it's basically is from with in him. Okay, in is basically absence of duality or illusion being part of duality. Okay, let's get back to the main book, which is we go to seventh plane now, right? Okay, this now it's the seventh plane, and I read this experience of duality lingers on and on until the final involution of consciousness of the mental conscious human soul leads the soul to disassociate itself from the mind. The consciousness of the mind had objectified God and makes the soul associate itself with its own self, the soul, the biggest soul, or Atma. So if you see the last line that we read is in the last plane, this mental conscious human soul on the sixth plane is still conscious of duality, identifying himself as mind. This happens in the seventh plane. So if I read seventh plane again, this experience of duality lingers on and on until the final involution of consciousness of the mental conscious human soul leads the soul to disassociate itself from the mind. The consciousness of the mind had objectified God in brackets and makes the soul associate itself with its own big S self, the biggest soul or Atma. Thus, the consciousness of the soul is now set to experience at last the consciousness of the seventh plane. Here, on the seventh plane, the self-conscious human soul is conscious of himself as God and experiences infinite power, infinite knowledge, and infinite bliss. So, coming to which thought, I had shared something on the group based on Sunil's note. So, actually, it might be a good idea to quickly see Sunil's note.
So, Jai Baba, if I may add,
Yeah.
in the seventh plane, when it says that the mental consciousness, so it's basically Manonash.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It is Manonaj. Annihilation of the mind, to use
Yes.
uh,
Uh,
Baba
yeah,
phrase.
yeah, Baba phrase, annihilation of the mind.
Yeah, I'm just getting the reference. uh, Why that reference is important now is i- if you look at the experience that is being talked about in the seventh plane. And
That is on Telegram.
WhatsApp.
Okay.
Got it. I'm just opening it up. So here it is. So this is all from Baba's teachings. So if you remember, a lot of the discussion in the last session, last Sunday, was on ordinary mukti, right? So if you see ordinary mukti, this is a very nice table that he has created, Sunil. A soul can attain what is known as ordinary mukti on the sixth plane of consciousness. This is a state of liberation from the cycles of birth and death, but it is not the final state of God realization. Now, this was, if you remember, this was his moot point. It is not the final state, right? The soul sees God everywhere, divine sight, but still retains a subtle form of ego and cannot guide others spiritually. So, no duty, and there is duality, existence of duality. So I don't know if this is existence of duality, but still sees God everywhere. Okay. Now then there is a table, and the aspects are: if final mukti or God realization is distinguished from ordinary mukti, he distinguishes it on multiple levels. This is Sunil's work, right? And based exactly on God Speaks references. references from Baba's text. So the plane for ordinary mukti is sixth plane. Now, here I have a problem. I don't think it is sixth plane. So I wish Sunil was here. Uh, I believe that ordinary mukti happens after birth. After dropping the body, right? Rebirth, no, agreed. Ego, subtle ego remains. And that's, to use Baba's phrase, retains a subtle form of ego. Right? These are all Baba's words. Does he see God? Yes. With separation and without separation. Is he God? He is not God, but here he is God. Okay. Uh, I would argue that in both cases we are just not aware of it. Again, I don't want to split hairs here, but you know what I mean. Then can guide. That is, does he have a role to others? Absolutely no, because ordinary mukti is just a dead end. आपका काम हो गया, आपको shortcut मिल गया, आपका काम खत्म, right? Yes, you have a role if you're a perfect master. Not just a perfect master, many other people in the hierarchy, but perfect master is the most prominent and has the longest and most important role, let us say, right? So, and the references that he has taken are uh, reproduced here. So, thank you so much, Sunil, for the efforts, because uh, this is a very, very good summary on ordinary mukti, and I will be putting it up as a reference as well in the document. Then, what happened to the share? Just give me 1 second. I think the sharing is gone. I'm just bringing it back. Yeah. So glossary reference, he has two references. Glossary is 7th edition of discourses, and moksha, ordinary mukti, or liberation achieved by most souls, which are the pages that he has just brought out here. Now, let me just open up what I had done on AI. The which screen are you able to see? You're able to see the word screen. Are you? Can somebody confirm?
Yes, yes, we can see the.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
We are
Because
seeing
here it's wrongly. What
the
is that?
glossary reference.
Yeah. So that's fine. So now I'll just show you what I wanted to, uh, which I also put on the chat as well. I wanted to share it so that it's visible to all on how this whole thing works. So if you see this one, I've done this question based on, yeah, this one. Yeah. Oh, it's not saved here. I'm sorry. Okay, then let's check it in all books.
What exactly are you looking for?
No, ordinary mukti as reference. So if you see what I'm doing is I'm basically using artificial intelligence on Google Notebook LLM. And if you see on the left, these are the sources. The sources are literally every book of Baba's. And I've added
Okay.
those books and trained those. I mean, it just takes minutes. I'm trying to see what Baba says across this. And I had done this and shared it as well, but I wanted to show you how it's done.
Okay.
So if you see, it gives you an immediate cross references from multiple books, including the actual text, right? So each time it gives you the actual text as well, which is what I had shared on the WhatsApp group. So just put it back there.
You shared when on WhatsApp?
So everybody suffers from WhatsApp itis, right? So I shared immediately after Sunil shared the ordinary mukti. I think later that day, not immediately, but I think it was pretty late. So if you look at it, this is what it is. Definition is ordinary mukti, also referred, is a type of liberation that's achieved only after the death of the physical body by some exceptionally God-fearing, truth-loving God souls, right? So here it's very clear that it is after death of the physical body. So this was the part that was missing in Sunil's uh, 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 summary, right? This liberation usually occurs 3 to 5 days after the soul has left the body. It is attained without the body. So these are three uh, key differentiators. Then, in ordinary mukti, the soul enjoys only bliss, whereas in God realization, infinite knowledge, infinite power, and bliss are enjoyed simultaneously. So, and then to clarify further, although power and knowledge are present, such a mukta, the soul, cannot consciously experience or use them. Such a liberated soul is conscious only of the bliss of union with God. For someone in the ordinary mukti, creation no longer exists. And the proof for that is body is not there. So creation is already gone. I mean, right here it says it is attained without the body, right? The state of liberation brings to an end the constant round of births and deaths. So this is my moot point. So to the question whether it is an end, I believe it is an end in the sense that if you remember Sunil's discomfort about ordinary mukti, he said, "Is it an logical endpoint?" I beg to differ and say Baba says it is one of the logical endpoints. It may not be the best. It may not be the most fancy. It is not becoming a unicorn, but well, it's an exit. Okay, you've got a good valuation. You've probably listed on your IPO and you're out. So it's not a bad deal. So that's one. Now let's get back to what else is Google saying. So Google also then differentiates between all the other states, which is, I think, uh, um, maybe we'll just quickly read it. Nirvikalpa Samadhi must not be confused with ordinary mukti or moksha, as the latter is experienced after the death of the physical body. Latter is ordinary mukti. Whereas Nirvikalpa Samadhi is experienced while the soul retains the body. So that's one distinction. Ordinary mukti contrasts with Videha mukti, where God realized souls retain the body for a period of after realization and experience infinite bliss, power, and knowledge, even if they cannot consciously use them in creation. Okay, so that's the contrast with Videha mukti. Then Jivan mukti is another type of liberation where the individual enjoys all bliss, all knowledge, and all power while still embodied. So Jivan mukta is different. Jivan mukta experiences it with the body. Parama Mukti, attained by perfect masters, involves simultaneous consciousness of the I am God state and duality with the ability to use all power, all knowledge, and all bliss in all planes of existence to help others. In summary, ordinary Mukti involves only bliss and no consciousness of I am God or duality, unlike the other forms of Mukti which involve varying degrees of God consciousness. awareness of duality, and the capacity to experience and utilize divine attributes. So I think with this, we'll get back to our reading, but I
Yeah.
wish Sunil was
There's
here.
one question,
Yeah,
and I see that Karma has also joined,
yeah.
and that is the ordinary mukti equivalent of real death as mentioned in supplement 19? That is the
So again, it's no equal. So this is not a process of equality.
okay.
It's a. All I would say is, uh, if you're mentioning real death to indicate the soul's journey ending where it does not have to find another uh, body to enter, yes. In that sense, yes, it is real death. Because after ordinary mukti, you're out of the cycles of birth and death.
Yeah, the cycles of birth and death or reincarnation.
Correct. That closes. That's very, very clear. And where is that clear? Again, whatever I'm saying, I'm quoting exactly from uh, Baba's words, right? So if you go to ordinary mukti, is a state of liberation, see, that this is straight from Baba's text, Sunil's document. This is a state of liberation from the cycles of birth and death. So उसके
Okay.
बाद एक और birth and death नहीं है. So in that sense, yes, it's real death. Oh, see, you can have multiple endpoints to your spiritual journey, and it is entirely driven by your sanskaric makeup and Baba's grace and what path you've chosen. And I dare say, none is superior, none is inferior. Okay, it's just what you're cut out to make. And in that sense, I believe my goal in life is MOM. I'm begging Baba to say minimum ordinary mukti. At least itna to de do,
Ah,
right?
ah, yes, yes.
So that is MOM for you. MOM is what me and Kama say. So in the context for that is this. So we wouldn't say no for something more, right? If we are going to get an experience of infinite bliss and power and knowledge at the same time, and continue to be in creation to spread the word of Baba, help many others, why not? Why should we say no? It's bounden upon us to share this with others and do Baba's work. But that's not your decision. That's Baba's decision. So our decision is only to plead MOM. कर
What we
सकते हैं
get
ना?
is
So that's the whole context for MOM.
yes, yes. Rightly
What
said.
is that?
Thank you. I said what we get is based on our karmic, or let's say, based on
And Baba's grace.
Baba's grace. Yes,
And Baba's grace. Anyway,
yes.
so I wish Sunil was here, and I'm sure I will send him a specific reference to catch up with this video so that he actually enjoys and gets to see this discussion. Okay, so with that, let's get back to seventh plane. So, Kama, you missed this. So now we have all the text of Baba loaded up on Notebook LLM. So this can be used by. In fact, I should open up this some way where everybody can use it. But again, setting this up, anybody can do. It's very easy, and it's free. Right? So more on that later. So let's continue. We finished the first paragraph. Let's go to the second one. Thus, the consciousness of the soul is now set to experience at last the consciousness of the seventh plane. Here, on the seventh plane, the self conscious human soul is conscious of himself as God and experiences infinite power, infinite knowledge, and infinite bliss. For the mental conscious human soul to cross the sixth plane and experience the seventh plane by his own efforts is quite impossible. There are two references. One, a footnote, and second, a supplement reference. So we first see the footnote, and the footnote says, however, those in the sixth plane of consciousness realize God at the time of dropping their bodies. What does this mean here? However, those in the sixth plane of consciousness realize God at the time of dropping their body. So if, okay. So what it means here is, this is very interesting. I did not register this earlier. So if you're in the sixth plane of consciousness and you drop your body, does that mean you realize God? That's what this suggests. Am I reading this and understanding this correctly? So let's read that line again, the line that took us here. For the mental conscious human soul to cross the sixth plane and experience the seventh plane by his own efforts is quite impossible. So this suggests that there is a role of the grace of the master. And we'll know more about that in supplement 10. But what he's saying in the footnote is, however, those in the sixth plane of consciousness realize God at the time of dropping their bodies. So I think uh, we should put a note here. So what it means is, in case you don't get the grace of the master and move to the seventh plane from the sixth plane, and you end up dropping your body. At that point, you will realize God. But that's ordinary bhakti. Because your body is not there, you're not getting the other two, so on and so forth. So this is, I hope everybody agrees.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
Baba.
now let's,
I think, yeah. Um, See,
yeah, Kama, go
you're
ahead.
saying it says realize God,
Yeah.
which means God realization. And God realization or self realization implies Satchitananda, infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss. So that is almost like the third part of Mukti, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Because
Hmm.
liberation, Mukti, is a generic word. What we are talking about is Mukti means Mukti from samsara, from the cycle of birth and death, which means you don't have to come back again in any of the planes or even with sanskaras or whatever, right? So when you are on the sixth plane, which means that your sanskaras are very, very minimal, very rudimentary in the sense that um, uh, there is only the separation between the object of love, that is the divine beloved, and the subject, the person who is on the sixth plane. So there is a very thin line that divides him or her in the sixth plane to attain God realization, but you need the guidance of a perfect master to do that. So once you reach the sixth plane, for me, what it implies is just like what happened to Aurobindo. He was on the sixth plane. So anybody on the sixth plane is guaranteed to get God realization at the time of dropping the body, and they don't come back again. So there
So I
is
have a
definitely a
question for you. If I
uh,
can pause you here, because I think this is an important clarification which will help me. So let's say I am in the sixth plane and I'm still in the sixth plane, and for whatever reason, I drop the body, right? So you're saying and based on the verbatim words in the text we read in God Speaks, I will get God realization, and that would mean I will get knowledge, power, and bliss. Now,
yes.
my question to you is, how can I experience knowledge, power, and bliss, whereas when I cannot experience power without a human form? Creation is already gone. My body is dropped. So, and in support of that, I have these references here where it says that you can experience only if you have the body, you will get the experience of all bliss, all knowledge, and all power.
Not necessarily,
So,
because
so if you
you
see,
don't
this
need.
is again Baba's text. Uh, Jivan Mukta is another type of liberation where the individual enjoys all bliss, all knowledge, and all power, and he's still embodied. So, my question to you is, can you be disembodied and enjoy all three at the same time?
Absolutely, absolutely. When you
Okay,
are,
okay.
doesn't matter whether you're in the form or formless, you
Mm,
will experience, once you are in this, once you attain God realization, whether you attain God realization in the body and, you know, um, with the help of the perfect master, or you attain God realization when you are in the sixth plane and after dropping the body. The soul consciousness will definitely experience that in the formless aspect, in the nirguna nirakara aspect. Yes.
okay, so
Once
that
you have
is
once
a
you have attained
block
that,
in my
see the
head.
only see what we understand is very clear that every soul consciousness. One thing we know is every soul will is guaranteed mukti. 84 lakh human lives, soul
Exactly.
consciousness.
Yeah,
Number two is to get moksha, ordinary mukti, before 84 lakh human lives. That is also possible for God fearing souls. Then, higher than that, that is only after death. MOM happens only after the dropping of the body, the death of the body. Whereas
correct,
Nirvana, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Sahaja Samadhi happens before the dropping of the body. So,
correct.
we also know from God speaks that after attaining Nirvikalpa Samadhi, most soul consciousness after 3 days will drop their body and go off into the formless. Only
Yes,
the 56 God realized souls who are destined to be in their body
duty.
as Majzub or Paramahamsa or Jivan Mukta or Sadguru. So Paramamukta is for Sadgurus and Jivan Mukta, is a attain Jivan Mukti, basically. So those are just statuses and states, Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm clear. I think the big block I had was you cannot have the experience of all three if you are not, if you are disembodied, but that's useful. Um, okay, so let's get back. Now we go to supplement 10.
I think the only thing I wanted to confirm was that it almost seems from the literature that when you're in the sixth plane, you're guaranteed God realization at least after you drop the body. That's what the implication seems like.
Yes,
Once you have
yes,
already reached the sixth plane.
yes,
Because ordinary
that's
moksha, ordinary mukti can happen even in the gross body, even if you're in the gross plane of existence or in any of the planes, basically. But it seems like you're guaranteed when you're in the sixth plane, at least you have self realization after dropping the body. It's almost like comparison between moksha, ordinary mukti, and self realization after dropping the body, kind of thing. Yeah.
what's the last thing you said? Repeat that. I'm confused.
Oh, what I'm trying to say is
Mhm.
that in moksha, ordinary mukti, you get bliss,
Yeah,
whereas in God realization, you get
get all
Sachitananda.
three.
But
Yeah,
but moksha, ordinary mukti can happen in any plane, whereas
yes. Sixth
God
plane guarantees
realization
that.
happens in the sixth plane, but after dropping the body. In both,
Yeah,
the common denominator is dropping the body. In
yeah.
one, you have bliss, moksha, ordinary mukti. The other one is sixth plane, dropping the body, you get self realization in the formless.
Again, self-realization, God realization used synonymously.
Yes, self realization, God realization after dropping the body.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed. Cool. So let's continue to seventh plane, the supplement. Seventh plane. It should be understood that at the moment of being merged into the seventh plane, all links with the gross, subtle, and mental bodies and with the universe are necessarily snapped. In ordinary gross existence, there is no parallel to the snapping of these long enduring vital connections that bind the individual to his three bodies and to the universe. Physical death is, by comparison, an insignificant thing, about as significant as the snapping of a piece of string. Ordinarily, at the instant of death, the subtle body and vital force are separated completely from the gross body. But the mind maintains the connection with the gross body for the first 4 days after death, and to a slighter degree for 7 days more after that. In the final annihilation, fana, however, the separation is not between body and mind, it's the actual annihilation of mind and all naksh-e-amal, that is the sanskaras. So the sanskaras are eliminated after annihilation of the mind, and that is the final annihilation. That's the final fana, right? So the key thing that's being pointed out here is all links with the gross, subtle, and mental bodies are necessarily snapped. And this is distinguished from physical death, where, physical death is a very less significant thing. And the body also retains contact with uh, 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 the mind maintains connection with the gross body for the first 4 days, and after death, to a slighter degree, for 7 days more after that. Yeah. So I think so we get back to primary book, primary text. Yeah. This is where we went to the supplement, so I continue. At this stage, the grace of a perfect master is absolutely essential to help the mental conscious human soul to disassociate himself from the consciousness of mind and make him realize his unity with the infinite state, to experience infinite bliss consciously, and to realize that he, Atma, was eternally in bliss. So again, the grace of a perfect master is very, very essential in seventh plane. So it is that the self-conscious, biggest self, so it is that the biggest self-conscious human soul of the seventh plane is now fully conscious of the big S self as infinite and eternal, and is now also conscious of the big S source of energy and mind, which were nothing but the shadowy aspects of his own infinite power and infinite knowledge. So the small power that he experienced was a shadowy aspect of his own infinite power, and the knowledge was also a shadow of the eternal knowledge or the full knowledge. This biggest self-conscious human soul, which is now biggest self-realized or God realized, not only experiences infinite power, knowledge, and bliss, but simultaneously radiates them. Sometimes, in certain cases, such biggest self-conscious human souls also make use of this infinite power, knowledge, and bliss directly and consciously for the emancipation of other souls from their impressions and their respective associations with the gross, subtle, and mental forms and worlds. In its travail to gain biggest self-consciousness, the individual eternal Atma, soul, unconscious of its infinite state in Paramatma, gathered and experienced innumerable diverse impressions, and all the while associated itself with finite and ephemeral existences, unfurling the gross, subtle, and mental worlds, while evolving gross consciousness of the gross world, and while involving consciousness of the subtle and mental planes of the subtle and mental worlds. Involution of consciousness of the Atma, soul, culminated by the grace of a perfect master, led the Atma to biggest self-realization of its infinite state in Paramatma. So there is a footnote here. Persian. Sab bar tahira daman ha toj मीरे आया जब आंख खुली दिखा अपना ही गरीबा गरीबाज है. Asghar is the poet. 100 times I felt that I held your garment firmly in my hands. 100 times I felt that I held your garment firmly in my hands. When I opened my eyes, I was amazed to discover it was my own garment that I was holding. So the realization that the shadowy experiences were just that, the shadow, and you experience the full scale of the infinite nature of the three aspects of power, knowledge, and bliss. And it was there all along, but in the absence of the mind and sanskaras, you experience it. Thus, it is that when the consciousness of the Atma gained self-consciousness and experienced infinite power, knowledge, and bliss, the Atma realized that it exists eternally. That all through the travail to gain self-consciousness, biggest self-consciousness, the impressions, experiences, and associations of the gross, subtle, and mental bodies and worlds were nothing but a vacant dream. And that the identification with gross bodies, creatures, and human beings, and all the experiences of the three worlds and six planes, with all of their paraphernalia, had their relative existence sustained and maintained as long as the consciousness of the Atma was immature. Maturity was only gained in the seventh plane with consciousness fully involved. This led the Atma to realize the biggest self or made the Atma fully conscious of God realization. In other words, the Atma's own infinite state in Paramatma was consciously realized. Again, the most common usage or definition of God realization is conscious experience of God, right? So, in other words, the Atma's own infinite state in Paramatma was consciously realized. And there is footnote. The God realized man is the Almighty plus knowledge and consciousness. He is in the perfect wakeful state. He is knowledge, knower, and the known. He is love, lover, and the beloved. He knows that he is in every Jivatma and that everyone is in him. The God realized man knows that he is the be all and the end all of existence, and that he always was and will remain the same one, infinite ocean of truth. But the ordinary man does not know whence he came and whither he will go. So it's just a definition or a clarification of what is the state of being in God realization. Going back, the last paragraph on this page. It is only after the final annihilation of the mind and the wearing out of the curtain of mental impressions that consciousness can function in full freedom from all impressional bindings. This means crossing the deep abyss which separates the sixth plane from the seventh plane. The seventh plane is the formless abode of the highest of the high. The seventh plane, I highlight this, is also can be described as the formless abode of the highest of the high. And there is a footnote. The reader is referred to Fariduddin Attar's Mantik ut Tayar, a Sufi allegory generally known as the Conference of the Birds, for a delightful description of the journey through the plains. There are multiple references to this book by Baba, and this is very, very famous in Sufi thought and Sufi books. Recently, there was a play organized on this poetry. It was I think presented in multiple cities in India. So as part of a Sufi exposition, but just thought maybe at some time we have to read this just to enjoy and understand newer aspects that we may uncover from this. It's translated in English, by the way. It's a very famous Sufi book. Okay, let's continue. The Most High, or the infinite God as Big T truth, can be realized only by transcending the entire realm of imagination. Only on this seventh plane does the soul fulfill the initial urge for self-knowledge by experiencing its own biggest self as identical with the unchanging, eternal, indivisible, and formless oversoul with infinite knowledge, infinite reality, truth, infinite power, and infinite bliss. So there's another aspect Baba has introduced in the last paragraph, infinite reality or big T truth. Okay, so with that, we come to the end of the planes. The chapter also called planes, but basically we go through the seven planes. And here is the chart. This is explained in the chapter, probably in the first few pages. And then we are now ready to go to part 6. I take a pause here. Any quick thoughts?
That suggestion of reading that conference of the birds if I, is a good suggestion. We can always take out some time and read that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, but we'll have to find the book. I have not, though, I made a note to myself for the nth time that I should research and see if it is it's available and if it's too big, too small, and so on, and see whether it's practical to read. But yeah, that's a good point. We will do it. Inshallah.
Inshallah, yes. There's a lot to process in this few pages.
Yes, absolutely. So, like I said, we took 4 sessions to finish the planes, but we always take away something new. Like for me, the big takeaway was you can get the experience of all the 3 states, all the 4 states, let's say, including reality, truth, uh, without the body. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue reading. Part 6, summary of states of divine consciousness. After taking human form and gaining full consciousness, that full consciousness which the Atma, soul, trained in order to experience Paramatma, the Atma still does not experience Paramatma because even after attaining full consciousness, as long as this consciousness remains centered in gross impressions, the Atma perforce is made conscious of the gross body and must therefore experience the gross world. That's after human form. Without having human form, it is impossible for the Atma to gain consciousness of subtle and mental bodies and of biggest self. Similarly, it is impossible to gather experience of the subtle world, the mental world, and of Paramatma. The evolution of consciousness and for the evolution of form and for the experience of the world, it is absolutely necessary to have gross sanskaras, impressions, And as long as there are gross impressions, the Atma has no consciousness of the subtle and mental bodies. In human form, because of the evolution of full consciousness and because of the evolution of perfect form in the shape of a human being, and because of having taken full experience of the gross world, there is now no more need of gross impressions. Gross impressions can become subtle impressions. Subtle impressions can become mental impressions, and mental impressions can disappear. So, in human form, the Atma can have consciousness of the subtle and mental bodies and of Atma itself, an experience of the subtle world, mental world, and of Paramatma. But the tragedy is that immediately after gaining full consciousness in human form, the Atma does not gain consciousness of subtle, pran, and mental, mana, bodies, and biggest self, and likewise does not experience the subtle and mental worlds and does not have experience of Paramatma. This is because gross sanskaras do not become subtle sanskaras or mental sanskaras, nor disappear immediately after the Atma has gained full consciousness in human form. The reason for this is that the first human form made out of the last animal form, when dropped, leaves behind a legacy of impressions of the first human form, and then each following incarnated human form is made up of the last human form sanskaras. So, the Atma, in spite of having full consciousness, takes a number of human forms as long as gross sanskaras exist. Pause. Any thoughts or comments? Eventually, I will continue. Eventually, one of two things happen. The Atma's gross sanskaras may entirely disappear all of a sudden, and the Atma lose consciousness of the gross body and gain consciousness of the biggest self, thus losing the experience of the gross world and gaining experience of Paramatma. This is sudden. So one thing is it can happen absolutely suddenly. Or let's go to the second one. Or the second more likely possibility is that eventually the gross sanskaras will fade and become subtle sanskaras. Subtle sanskaras fade more and more, become mental sanskaras, and finally, mental sanskaras fade to such an extent that they disappear. In this case, the Atma first loses consciousness of the gross body and the experiences of the gross world and gains consciousness of the subtle body and experience of the subtle world. Then the Atma loses consciousness of the subtle body and gains consciousness of the mental body and loses experience of the subtle world and gains experience of the mental world. Finally, the Atma loses consciousness of the mental body, thereby gaining consciousness of the Atma itself and loses the experience of the mental world and gains experience of Paramatma. So it's basically the journey through the planes, or rather the worlds, based on the sanskaric movement that the individualized soul experiences. The journey of the individualized soul through the different stages of sanskaras. After the Atma has gained biggest self-consciousness and experiences the Paramatma, the Atma inherits one of the three states, not two or four states, but three states definitely. So let's underline this or highlight this and then go to the three states. First state A. Soon after this experience of the highest of the high, the Atma generally drops all of its shadowy bodies, gross, subtle, and mental, and eternally enjoys individualized experience as a whole. the infinite power, knowledge, and bliss of God without using the attributes thereof. Key thing is individualized experience, right? So infinite power, knowledge, and bliss of God without using the attributes thereof. So what does this mean here? Without using the attributes thereof. Okay, let's go to state B. Maybe that will help us understand this better. First, state B. The Atma may not drop these three bodies until some time afterwards, although it is absolutely unconscious of these bodies. Except that it retains the bodies, its state is actually the same as A. So in state B, the bodies may remain for some time, but it's absolutely unconscious. So the state is more like A, right? Then states this the second state. The Atma retains
Jai
the
Baba,
three body. Yeah.
uh, I think first, can you go back to first state A?
Yeah.
Yeah. After this experience, the highest of the Atma generally drops all of its shadow bodies and internally enjoys individualized experience as a whole. So basically, it drops all of the bodies means that after Nirvana and Nirvikalpa Samadhi, after a few days, 3 days,
4
minimum
days.
3 to 7 days, the body gets dropped. That is first state A. And first state B is basically a state of a Majzub who is part of the 56 God realized souls. That's the difference. Jai Baba.
But he's not aware of it. Okay, correct. In the state B, Majzub is not aware of consciousness, but happens to still retain the body. Okay, so we'll just make a little note here to say that this is Majzub. Okay, second state. The Atma retains the three bodies and simultaneously, with biggest self consciousness, is also conscious of its three shadows, gross, subtle, and mental bodies, and at the same time experiences the infinite power, knowledge, and bliss of God. It also experiences the gross world, subtle world, and mental world as God's shadows, but it does not use the power, knowledge, and bliss of God for the other Atmas who are mental conscious, subtle conscious, and gross conscious. And so it is independent. So this is the second state. So it's not having any role to play with the other souls in creation. Third state. This is exactly like the second state, except that the Atma uses underline or in bold, its infinite power, knowledge, and bliss in making gross conscious Atmas subtle conscious, and subtle conscious Atmas mental conscious, and mental conscious Atmas self conscious, big as self, even at one stroke, making the gross conscious Atmas biggest self conscious. Now, this, should I say, is perfect master? The third state. But what is the second state? Anybody? Kama, what is the second state? Are you there? So, a Peer, a Vali, everybody helps. Jivan Mukta. So, if you read this, it's just that you have reached the tri-state, but you are not aware of, you don't have a role, and you're not doing anything for others. So what is that state called? Is there
You're,
a
you're
reference?
basic. See, you're basically a Paramahamsa Jivan Mukta, where you play a passive role. You don't actively participate with the public in terms of helping them, but you're the beacon of light. Except the Jivan Mukta, one, the common Jivan Mukta can give self realization to one, and the rare form of Jivan Mukta called Akmal, which you will read later, can give self realization to many. So that is the difference. So their roles are basically now they are just there to do their duties passively, excluding the Sadgurus. That's the difference.
He would even
Yeah.
say that there is no mention of duty here, right? So, though I agree with your point that it could be they could have this limited role of one other duty, but here it says very clearly it also experiences the gross world, subtle world, and mental world as God's shadows, but it does not use the power, knowledge, and bliss of God for the other Atmas who are mental conscious,
Okay, I
subtle
jumped to the
conscious.
no, no, I jumped to the third state. Sorry. I
Yeah,
second
yeah,
state is
yeah.
like the Paramahamsa and the Madzubs.
Not even
Okay,
Majzub. Majzub, I agree, is right here because they are
first
not
state B,
able, they are
first
not
state B.
conscious. Yeah,
Yes,
yes, yes. So this one is basically people in a God realized state and conscious of the worlds, but they have no role. So I don't think there is a defined state for it. Maybe Paramahamsa, but Paramahamsa also alternates, right? So Paramahamsa in the uh, uh, divine state, not creation conscious, is the second state. Correct?
difference between Madzub and the others is Madzub is not having body consciousness.
Correct.
All 456 God realized souls are self realized, have God consciousness. Whereas the difference between the Majzup and the other three is that they have body consciousness too. And then
Yes.
you have duties, active duties for the Sadguru, and Jivan Mukta, only he gives self
Limited.
realization to one person. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Limited duty. Yeah. Okay. Clear. So I'm not tagging the second state as something because it's actually not clear. If we get back some clarity elsewhere, we'll come back and do it. Okay. So let's continue. Full development of subtle and mental bodies in human form and involution of consciousness. Only in the human form are subtle, pran, and mental, mana, bodies fully developed. Therefore, even when the Atma has gross consciousness and is unconscious of prana and mana, it does work through prana and mana, not directly, but on the gross plane. So even if the gross conscious human Atma is unconscious of prana and mana and therefore does not realize energy and mind, it can use energy through various aspects of energy, example nuclear, and it can use mind through various aspects of mind, such as thoughts, desires, and emotions. This is before getting into full involution of consciousness. In the human form, when the Atma has subtle consciousness, it is unconscious of the gross, Sharir, and the mental mana bodies. Yet it does work through Sharir and mana, not directly, but on the subtle plane. So even if the subtle conscious human Atma is unconscious of Sharir and mana, and therefore does not realize the gross and mental worlds, it can use the gross through various aspects of the gross as eating, drinking, sleeping, seeing, feeling, hearing, etc. And it can use mind through various aspects of the mind as thoughts, desires, and emotions. In the human form, when the Atma has mental consciousness, it is unconscious of the gross, Sharir, and subtle Pran bodies, but it does work through Sharir and Pran, not directly, but on the mental plane. So even if the mental conscious human Atma is unconscious of Sharir and Pran, and therefore does not realize the gross and subtle worlds, it can use the gross through various aspects of the gross, such as eating, sleeping, seeing, feeling, hearing, etc., and it can use energy through various aspects of energy, such as nuclear, etc. To give a simile, let us consider, for instance, a gross conscious human Atma as a soul on earth, which we take as a standard for the gross plane, far flung from the sun, which, for instance, for the purpose of our simile only, we take as the source of energy of the subtle and the source of mind of the mental. The simile of sun and earth must never be misconstrued as the sun and earth of the solar system. This sun, which we have now adopted as our standard, sheds its rays of energy and mind continuously and simultaneously on the earth, which we have taken as the standard for the gross. And the gross conscious human soul on earth, conscious only of the gross, unconsciously imbibes from the sun's rays the energy, big E, of the subtle by making in the gross world the fullest use of the aspects of this big E energy in the form of nuclear energy. Also, this gross conscious human soul on earth unconsciously makes use in the gross world of the aspects of big M mind, such as thoughts, desires, and emotions, which it also imbibes from this sun's rays. So it's basically the source. For the purpose of continuing our simile, we shall now take the subtle conscious human soul as a soul in air, and hence much nearer this sun than the gross conscious human Atma on earth. This subtle conscious human soul in air is conscious only of the subtle, consciously imbibes the fullest energy from the sun, which is the source of energy, and consciously makes use of this tremendous energy in its nascent form. Thus, this subtle conscious human soul is capable of wielding tremendous power and is quite capable of giving sight to the blind or limbs to the maimed. This is the domain of the first three planes, and the capability of the soul to liberate energy in any intensity is achieved according to the degree of subtle consciousness gained by it in the second and third planes. Just as a confirmation, we see in the charts that the subtle world, and we see energy is there in up to the third plane, and this is the threshold of the fourth plane. I mean, the fourth plane acts as the threshold of the mental plane, but energy reaches full power, right? So that's what is explained using the sun analogy. While the subtle conscious human soul, I continue reading, while the subtle conscious human soul in its realm of big and E energy consciously makes use of energy in its nascent state, it is unconscious of the mental. Therefore, unconsciously, it makes use of the aspects of mind, big M, such as thoughts, desires, and emotions. Thus, though it is capable of wielding tremendous power through its consciousness of biggie energy, it is susceptible to getting entangled by mind while making use of the aspects of big M mind unconsciously. For this reason, the subtle conscious human soul, although mighty powerful, sometimes slides down to the lower level of subtle consciousness while the form of powers. To be more precise, the subtle conscious human soul is either in the first or second or third plane according to the degree of subtle consciousness gained, or one may say that the domain of the subtle sphere comprises the first, second, and third planes. Now, the fourth plane is that state of consciousness which draws a line of demarcation between the domain of the subtle world and the domain of the mental world. In other words, the subtle conscious human Atma on the fourth plane is like a human soul standing on the threshold of the mental world, which delimits the subtle world from the mental world. Therefore, the subtle conscious human soul at the stage of consciousness of the fourth plane is fully conscious of the first, second, and third planes and experiences in full the subtle world, and so is completely conscious of the tremendous energy of the subtle world. Thus, this human soul, on the threshold of the mental world, commanding the energy at its height, is now nearest to the domain of big M mind, which is the mental world, and thus is much more susceptible to the overpowering forces of the aspects of the mind, namely the thoughts, desires, and emotions. And although this subtle conscious human soul on the fourth plane consciously makes use of the subtle world's energy at its zenith, it is still unconscious of big M mind. It is therefore unconsciously making use of the aspects of big M mind, which are now too overpowering and thus most alluring for the soul, which, so to speak, has to face and bear the full blast of the aspects of the mind, thoughts, desires, and emotions at their highest. This situation for the human soul on the fourth plane is extremely dangerous since it is extremely treacherous. Here, the soul, equipped with the highest energy, which can be put to use either for the best or for the worst, has to maintain a sort of equilibrium of two forces at their zenith. That is, the height of the energy of the subtle world and the overpowering height of aspects of the mind of the mental world. If this human soul on the fourth plane, while unconsciously using aspects of big M mind, is overcome by the overpowering allurements of these aspects, thoughts, desires, and emotions in brackets, he then cannot resist using energy at its climax for the worst by performing powerful miracles such as raising the dead, curing the blind, the sick, and the maimed, etc., just to satisfy his own overpowering desires. He is even capable of creating the whole world of forms with all of its creation. So great is the power obtained from the energy at its height of which this subtle conscious human being soul is conscious. A lot being said, but basically it is to the risks of the fourth plane, of which a lot has been said multiple times by Baba. So just to replay that, the energy is at its peak. So you have full energy, that is full power at your command. And through that plane and in that level of involution, you have access to thoughts, thoughts, feelings, and desires of the mind. And if you are overpowered by them or carried away by them, your temptation would be to realize or use the powers to towards the use of thoughts, powers, and thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you have access through on the mental plane. And a misuse can land you in trouble. Right? I pause here. Any thoughts? Any comments before we can continue?
I just want to add that misuse can put you into a loop.
Uh, More than a loop, it's actually, to use Baba's words, it's the only example of retrogression. So the journey of the soul is always one of progression, but the only case of retrogression is the fourth plane soul, fourth plane conscious soul who misuses the power. And by retrogression, we mean that instead of making forward progress, which, to use Kama's word a few minutes earlier, there is guaranteed forward progress. Okay. But the only example of that guarantee not working is your misuse. And that's why the role of the perfect master is very, very critical when you're in the fourth plane. I mean, it's critical right through, but most sensitive and most applicable during the fourth plane journey.
May we all have the grace of the perfect master.
Jai Baba,
Absolutely.
the question here comes about the aspect of free will, power of choice, and fate or destiny. See, there is a paradox aspect to it where one of the things is that Baba says, no blade of grass moves without my will. Whereas on the other side, also from the Big Bang, who am I? First initial urge, most original whim, who am I? The destiny of all soul consciousness is predetermined in terms of what kind of mukti each soul consciousness, drop soul consciousness will attain. So the interesting point here is on the fourth plane also, despite the surroundings, being surrounded by perfect masters and fifth and sixth plane saints, one can still use one's free will to abuse one's fourth power plane. So that is an interesting point here that I always kind of ponder about, Jay Baba.
It's very beautiful thing that you pointed out, right? So, but again, to be fair to what you said, this free will is actually played down by Baba compared to many other uh, uh, mm, thought and even from a Vedantic standpoint. So like Kama said, it's all already scripted. But in this example of the fourth plane, yes, there is a role very clearly for fourth plane. So something to, uh, I mean, for free will. Yeah. Let's just read one last
Probably it's
paragraph before the next
also,
section. Yeah.
sorry, probably it's also like a warning to us that don't play around in the fourth plane. Technically, I don't think the perfect masters would allow somebody on the fourth plane to abuse. When they see that abuse, they will probably prevent that to happen so as to prevent that retrogression. So it's
Hmm.
almost like the US policy of three strikes and you're in jail for a lifetime, kind of
Hmm.
thing. So it's more like a spiritual law or warning so that you know that if I do this, suppose you're a rapist, you're going to be castrated. That's like a kind of a warning, type of thing.
Veterans.
And so probably it's like a warning to all soul consciousness. You have the power to abuse your fourth plane power. You have the free will, but don't do it because this is the outcome. So my only logical understanding is that probably it doesn't happen. Why would the universe want you to go back? When somebody is there to prevent you from abusing that power. But definitely, people do abuse that power. We have seen in the so-called the spiritual marketplace. Jai Baba.
Yeah. For every rule, every deterrent, there are examples on both sides. So yes, it happens. And the aspect of it being a warning, there's no other better way. It's stronger than a warning. And the number of places and the number of times Baba mentions the fourth plane risks underlines the fact that it's a very severe and important warning that he has communicated to the world, to all of creation. So, like I said, let's just read this one paragraph before the section before wrapping up for today. Does this misuse of energy at its zenith through the medium and the overpowering allurements of the aspects of mind, also at their zenith, creates a sort of tremendous, irreparable short circuit in the two fundamental supernatural forces of energy at its zenith in the shape of stupendous power and of mind at its zenith in the shape of irresistible desire, resulting in an unimaginably tremendous clash and explosion in the advanced consciousness of the subtle conscious human soul of the fourth plane. So the risk is you have both at their zenith. The mental faculties are at their zenith. the energy is already at the zenith. Absolute disturbance is thus created in the consciousness of the soul, resulting in downright disintegration of the advanced consciousness of this human soul. Thereupon, this subtle conscious human soul invariably falls to the lowest level of consciousness, which is the most finite type of consciousness of the crudest form. Therefore, this human soul has to take the form of stone and has again to go through the process of evolution. So, from involution, you slip down, go to the most finite form of consciousness. In fact, you can say it is arguable as to whether it's even perceivable as to what the consciousness of a stone is, but that's where you go back to. So that's where you go back to and start the whole process of evolution again. Wonderful reading. Hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed today's reading. So thank you, Baba, for helping us enjoy this session and learn. Any closing remarks before we wrap up? Very good. So we will catch up next week. Everybody have a great week ahead. Avatar, Meher Baba, Jai.
Jai Avtar Mein Baba ki jai. Thank you.
Avtar Meher Baba ki
Thank you, Vijay ji.
Jai.
Thank you, Vijay ji. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ashok. Bye, Kama.
Bye bye.
Bye, bye, bye.